joining in. So yes, my name's Gavin Spores, pronouns he, him, and I'm a regional student recruitment officer at Norwich University of the Arts. A little bit of my background before diving in. So I was very much in your shoes for the students in the room here. I was at a college. I moved away from the Midlands. So I was Leicestershire based, and I moved over to Norwich to study there and did my undergrad. I did my postgrad as well. And now outside of my job here with the university, I still work across film and games industries. So that's just to say, for the Q&A that we'll do at the end, if you have any questions at all around any specific courses here, just studying creatively, but also working creatively, or if there's anything about moving away from the Midlands into a new city, a new area, this is your chance to ask me any questions at all. So diving into creative career paths, so we'll be highlighting kind of why we need creative students, and also looking at the benefits of studying creatively in higher education, and then having a look at what graduates have done and seeing what career paths are actually out there. And hopefully it'll inspire you and see what's out there, and maybe there might be different pathways that you might not even have thought existed. But diving in, if I can get the PowerPoint working, there we go. So why do we even need creative individuals, creative professionals? And well, if we didn't have any creatives, we'd literally be in this white world of nothingness. Like, take the environment around you that you're in right now. I'm sure, well, assuming you're inside somewhere, you've had an architect design the building that you're in, you've had an interior designer outfit the space that you're in for whatever purpose it serves. We've had fashion and textile designers design and make the very clothes and outfits that we're wearing right now. Unless you're cheekily in your pajamas hiding away behind the screen in your home. But still, all fashion and textiles for that. We were literally surrounded by creativity. It's very much a fabric of who we are as human beings and very much a part of our society. And it sounds very big, grand statements, but it's so true. We are intrinsically creative beings. So we obviously need creative people to keep that up, but also to keep innovating, keep pushing what creativity can do. Because yes, it's very much used for entertainment, but it can be used for real world issues and other things as well. Very much like, you know, wearing clothes on a day-to-day basis. Creativity is everywhere, is very much a part of every waking moment of us. So we need young, brilliant, creative-minded people like yourselves to keep that going, but also keep changing it, adapting it, innovating, and keep pushing forward. So a big thing that we get still to this day is all these different taboos about creative jobs, the creative industries. Oh, you always see headlines on newspapers of how useless a creative degree is, or you might have different friends, family, other people you might know that say, oh, it's not a real job, there's no money involved. Well, the facts say otherwise. The UK creative industries, so all those different sectors that are creative, all those different creative jobs and outlets, studios, companies, they're all valued. This is just the UK, by the way, £126 billion. So it generates £60 million an hour. So by the time I've done talking and running a session, the creative industries here in the UK would have generated £60 million. I would have loved to make £60 million an hour myself. So that's an insane amount of money. It's one of those figures where it's actually quite difficult to comprehend just how much that actually is. So the creative industries here is one of the largest sectors. So it's much bigger than agriculture, construction, sports. The only kind of bigger industries here in the UK is IT and digital, which the creative industries is very much a big part of. And then you got the financial sector, which nobody's going to trump that in terms of monetary value. But it's a huge, huge, huge sector, massive industry, and it's the fastest growing sector as well. So it's not just monstrously big, it's growing bigger and bigger and bigger at a much faster rate than any other sector that we have. So there's all of this money, which means there's all of these opportunities for different jobs available. So there's over 2.4 million jobs that are in the creative sector. So creative jobs there. So 1 in 14 working people are working in some kind of creative outlet. So lots of money, lots of job opportunities, lots of career opportunities for you to actually take part in. So it's all a load of nonsense, all these different headlines and news pieces about, because these are the literal hard, cold facts about the industry. So yes, lots of opportunities to get involved in. So that all sounds well and good. If you want a little slice of that pie, how do you actually go into there? And there are different routes that are, yes, you can go to higher education, go to an art specialist university like us. And of course, there are things to look into: apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships, just diving straight into the industry. Um, but there are massive benefits when it comes to going to an art specialist university. I mean, we're not the only ones, but we'll obviously look at it through our particular lens. So just looking at the course list here that we have. So these are all the different courses that we run at Norwich University of the Arts. And you'll find that typically at this point, you don't generally get these kind of overall art design courses. Like if you're still in that boat of wanting something like that, yes, I would say the best thing you could do is probably go for a fine art course. But there's a lot of these different areas I'm sure you'd be familiar with, such as like film and moving image production. That's the course I did. And other media-based things like animation, games art design. There's like illustration, graphics, your kind of traditional creative courses. Also, there's a lot of I imagine there's probably one or two here that you probably never realized that you could actually do, and particularly as a creative subject. So we're introducing psychology, for example, next year, and that will be a practice-based, exam-free course on psychology and how looking at how people interact with arts and using that to apply to real-world issues. So lots of these exciting things. And talking about the practical elements, so typically, like with us, with our courses, these are practice-based courses. We don't do any exam on any course here. It's all about giving you the time, the space, the resources, facilities, which we'll talk about, and just letting you make stuff. You're learning through making, but more importantly, it's about having the opportunity to build a professional portfolio to go to industry with. And as somebody who's still working in the industry, I can promise you that portfolio or show reel is absolutely everything. That is what's going to get you work, whether that's with employers or clients. And you can explore those through these different areas. And like I say, maybe there's a course here that you thought, oh, I never knew that existed, never knew you could do that. And if it was me, because we've got a lot of these are new courses that we're starting, so electronic music and sound production, I wish that existed back when I was studying at Norwich, because I would have absolutely done that course. It sounds so good. But yes, and even things like computer science, creative computing, creative technology, and robotics. A lot of these are creative courses and utilize creative processes, creative thinking. So it could be that you're doing typical STEM pathways, but actually you can apply that into creative practice-based degrees. And again, we're not the only university that run these types of courses, but we do them in our particular hands-on way. And the thing that definitely sets us apart from other places is that we don't do modules. You get given a project brief, and it's up to you how you interpret that. So you can really twist the course into what you particularly want to get out of it. And again, you can look to see whether you could do that with other universities and other hands-on practical-based art courses as well. So facilities, and I would say this is one of the biggest things that can help you if you particularly want to pursue a creative career, is having those resources, all the software, the hardware, physical making facilities to let you create things and develop that all important portfolio or show reel. And here is an example of different facilities that we have. So on the bottom right there, that's where I hung out a fair bit, was the Sir John Hurt studio, our film studio that we have. And there, yeah, they've got two professional actors in the boat. They built this rig so the boat rocks with water splashing around, but with a green screen curtain around. So they were able to collaborate with visual effects students and have these two characters in a little tiny boat in the middle of a raging sea, doing some amazing stuff there. And yeah, over on the left hand side and the bottom left are stop motion animation studios, and you can see just above that, and again a little bit fiery there, with our 3D workshops. So if you want to do woodwork, metalwork, and yeah, playing with fire, you can absolutely do that. If it's what you want to experiment with, play with, or if it's a part of your creative practice, that's what it's all there for. Whether it's digital or kind of traditional spaces, it's for you to be hands-on and to help you with that portfolio and to learn different skills, utilize different facilities that you may have not had a chance to use before. And what's nice as well here is that we have a complete open door policy with facilities. So say if you were a fashion student, you could absolutely use the film studio if you wanted to make a little film around a collection of garments that you've just made, and utilizing all those different spaces for your creative practice. So letting you be hands-on, because I can tell you now, that's one of the big things I miss from being a student, is having all of these resources available for free for me to use essentially whenever I want and for whatever I want. And particularly working across film and games, things are very expensive. So to have all of this to use is fantastic. And it's the same principle with any creative background. To have this opportunity and to use world-class facilities, you're not going to get that anywhere else unless you're right there working in some kind of top-end brand company or studio. So it's amazing to have the opportunity for that. And another big thing to really think about with university is the environment that you're in. And yes, you know, it's important to think about socially as well. Is the city, town area that you're in for higher education, is it somewhere that you feel comfortable? And does it have things like, you know, restaurants that you like? Does it have a cinema, bowling alley, things that you can do? And Norwich, for as small a city as it is, there's a lot going on. All sorts of different festivals to take part in. There's like three cinemas, with a fourth being built right now. Like the Plantation Gardens there. There's all sorts to get involved in. But particularly when it comes to creative practice, the environment is so important because it can really directly relate to the work and the projects that you're doing. And, you know, particularly as a filmmaker on the film course, there's one particular hill in Norwich that overlooks the entire city. And when you go there at golden hour, the sun's setting, it's like this amazing silhouette of the city in the background. And I absolutely utilize that for my film projects. We take a lot of students out to the Norwich Castle that we have, and there's a museum in the castle itself. And with your student card, you get free access to that. There's the castle there. And you get free access to it any time of the year. And there's some amazing resources and things in there that can inspire you for the work that you're doing. And also thinking outside of Norwich. Norwich itself is this amazing medieval city with old blending with new, but also you've got 55 beaches you can access in as little as a 40-minute train ride. So we do a lot of coastal work. We get a lot of photography students, for example, going out and doing a lot of landscape photography. And the architecture and interior design students are actually doing live industry projects with coastal authorities out there. And in between the beaches of Norwich, you've got the Norfolk Broads and all these amazing river networks. And again, you could go out, see what influences you and your practice. And also it's amazing to just rent a boat out for the weekend and hang out with your course mates or your housemates out there. And if you want that big city, more urban vibe, London is only an hour and a half away on a direct train from Norwich. So you've got everything you need. You've got beaches, you've got different river networks, countryside, you've got Norwich itself, you've got London, it's all there for you. Yes, great for social events and going out exploring, but also it can really directly relate into your creative practice. And that's something to really think about when it comes to university choices. It's not just thinking about the course and the university, but what's around that. How can you use that for that all important portfolio, and also just having a good time as well. So I was mentioning about industry connections because yes, a massive key component of getting into creative careers is having that portfolio or show reel, but also you need to know who to take that to. It's the art world. A lot of it is about who you know. So we take that really seriously. And here it's just kind of a snapshot of different relationships that we have with different brands, studios, companies. And in terms of what they've actually done for the students, for the university, they've either come in and run lectures, talks, masterclasses. They do a lot of workshops with our students, but also they do a lot of industry briefs as well. So actually getting you to work with them on client briefs. And we'll talk about that in this next slide of what industry experiences you can actually do. So, for example, on the right, in the top right there, this is a very recent one actually, where we had Virgin Wines. They came in and they wanted 5 official wine labels designing for new wines that they were selling on their website. So this was like a whole year project, I believe it was, with the illustration students, where they had to go out, research, and come up with a pitch. So almost like working as an actual freelance illustrator, where you're having to pitch your ideas to clients. So all the students presented their findings, their work, their ideas to Virgin Wines. And then Virgin Wines picked the top 5 that would have their labels actually made. So you can see the students there, like 2 of the 5 that were selected. So you can literally buy well, not you, because get your parents to do this, but you can literally buy bottles of wine with the labels designed by our current students, which is amazing. And we've actually done other things with Virgin Wines before as well. So that's been a really great relationship that we have with them. And on the left hand side there, so this is becoming more and more of a common thing that we're doing, where we're actually hosting international conferences. So we had the Computer Arts Technology Conference, which is this big international conference happening. We hosted that, so we had all sorts of different industry professionals from across the globe doing all these great keynote speeches. And we even had one of our graduates, Engie, who did our animation and visual effects course, and she works for, I keep getting it mixed up, I think it's either Double Negative or even Frame Store, and they're really world renowned visual effects studios based in London. And she works, I can't remember which one it is, but she works for one of them. And she came back as a graduate working in the industry to do a talk for the current students and for those other industry professionals as well. And the thing about these types of things with the talks and conferences is not just a case of sitting down, soaking in their knowledge and leaving again. Go up to them, shake their hand, introduce yourself, exchange your Instagram handle so you can DM each other, or exchange email addresses so you can keep in contact. It's all about building those professional relationships. And there's one great example. So somebody that I knew was on the games course when I was a film student. We weren't exactly like close friends or anything. We just hung out time to time and kind of aware of each other. And I had no idea what they were doing after they graduated. And it was years later when I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2, crying through the credits. And then through my tears, I could see her name in the credits. I had no idea that she was picked up by Rockstar straight after she graduated and worked on Red Dead Redemption 2, and now she's working on Grand Theft Auto 6. You can't really get bigger than that. And that's all because Rockstar came in, because we have a really good relationship with Rockstar for the games courses. And this particular student went up, start building a professional relationship, kept in contact when they graduated, approached them saying, right, I graduated, I'm ready to go. Here's my portfolio. Let's do some work. And she dove straight into Rockstar. A lot of it is about who you know. And I can attest that every single commission that I've done outside of being a student has been because of people I've known. So it's so important to network and get out there. And that's what going to an art specialist university can do for you. And there's also competitions as well. It's something that we're really big on with a lot of the courses here. So on the bottom in the middle there, particularly our graphics courses are so strong with the competitions. So I don't know whether you might be familiar with D&AD. So it's a big internationally recognized competition, and they particularly have D&AD New Blood. So it's for university graduates. But the competition is very tough, standards are very high, and it's hilarious because they don't give out trophies, they give out pencils, of course, keeping on brand. So they have like the yellow pencil, the graphite pencil, the white pencil, and the elusive black pencil. And this here is a student, so this was one last year, and they won, I believe, as the graphite pencil, which is one of the higher trophies, awards you could get from D&AD New Blood. And this was a brief set by Google, and they responded to that brief and they made this whole typography and font around hiding in plain sight. Google loved it, and they ended up winning one of these high-end awards. And I mentioned the black pencil because they don't always give out a black pencil. There's been years where nobody's received a black pencil across the world because it has to be exemplary work. And last year, only 2 students in the entire world got a black pencil. And one of them was ours, doing this amazing user experience design project that they did. It was absolutely amazing work. So all these competitions, to have that kind of accolade, that award on your CV, kind of highlight it in your portfolio, have it on your website, talk about it. But again, those competitions, because industry professionals are there, they're judging it, they're on the panels, and again, another experience to go out, build up that professional network. Networking is such a big part of being a creative professional. I just wanted to highlight as well about cost of living, because I know in terms of hurdles, what might be stopping you from going to university, I imagine for a lot of people is costs and things like that. And yes, there's student finance that comes into play. So you have your tuition fees covered. You would typically have like accommodation and bills and things like that covered from your maintenance line. But there's no shying away from it. We're in a cost of living crisis. And I know even just like day-to-day things can be difficult because of money and costs. So we're trying to do all these different schemes to help out, because finances should not get in the way of you developing your creative practice and having an education. And the great thing is that we're obviously not the only university providing cost of living support. You'll find that most, if not all, universities will have something in place. So we have all sorts of different bursaries and scholarships. I was actually a recipient of a bursary because I came from a low household income. I was just me, my mom, other siblings. And I think it was like £1,000 for every year I was studying, and that really helped out. So I got myself a laptop in the first year so I could work anywhere. And you can actually take out laptops from the university, but I used it to have my own laptop, and that was nice for me. The second year, I used it was all just for bills because I needed it at the time, so that really came in handy. And then the third year, used my bursary to get myself a camera to go freelance after I graduated. And you can use those bursaries however you want, but there's all sorts of different bursaries and scholarships. And a little top tip: if you go onto the website Save the Student, I believe it's savethestudent.com, or you can literally just Google Save the Student, and they have a particular page on that website where it highlights weird bursaries. And I kid you not, there are literally companies out there who will just give you free money if your name is like legally like Kevin. There was something like, if you are legally this specific name, here's £500 for university. And there's all sorts of these kind of weird, kooky pots of money out there for you to just take for free. So Save the Student. keep an eye out for that. It's great. It's got really great resources on there with bursaries and scholarships. And we're also, like with us specifically, we're doing like bus season discounts, even though Norwich, you can walk or cycle everywhere. But for those who want or need to use buses, we're working with the local bus company and doing like discounted tickets. We have a financial support fund. So if times are, if you're in a real pickle, we've got a student finance team and their financial support fund for if things get really dire, they can really help you out. And I actually didn't realize this. I had a story from a current film student who was out doing some amazing opportunity in Hong Kong, but there was all sorts of problems with flights, and then they needed to somehow have, hundreds of pounds just to get back home. Obviously didn't have that, called up the university and they sorted and basically rescued her and brought her back home. So there's always something in support in place for you if you really need it. We have different like discounted sports memberships, we have club links, and we have a whole sports and society participation fund. So again, you're not spending loads of money, or if you don't have money to be active and take part in these clubs and sporting events, you can absolutely do that. There's free bicycle repair that we have on campus, and we have free tea and coffee in the student union, and we even have a food bank as well. So again, if you're really struggling, we have a food bank on site as well. And something that we've just introduced is that we're not taking deposits anymore for accommodation, which is typically what happens for accommodation, that you always have to pay up like an upfront deposit. That does come out of the overall cost, but still is a chunk of money you have to pay up front. So we're not doing that anymore at all. And we have like money management workshops with our business and careers team as well. And that's with, oh gosh, I forgot the bank. It's one of the banks, HSBC, NatWest or something, and they're doing these workshops as well. So lots in place. So you don't have to have money, finances get in the way of having a creative education. So that, again, that all sounds well and good. You're being practical, you're being hands-on, developing your portfolio and taking part in industry projects and briefs and conferences, building that network. But what's that actually going to do for you when you graduate? A lot it can do for you. So this is not meant to be read, although if you've got the monitor right in front of your face, you could probably read through some of these. But this is essentially a snapshot of the types of jobs and careers our students have actually gone on to do from different subject areas. But what this really highlights is that there's so much you can do with one degree. And for example, in fine arts, like, yes, you can do the fine art course for 3 years and become a fine artist at the end of it, but there's so much more you can do with that. You could go into curation and work with museums and galleries. You could go into like creative education, become a lecturer, or we actually get a lot of fine art students who kind of run their own workshops and talks as freelancers. They're researchers for different brands, companies, and studios. We even get a lot of fine artists who become art therapists, for example. So there's so much you can do. There's even a fine artist that I know has really transitioned into games, and they're producing this interactive project with the BBC, and they've been doing that for a few years now. So there's all sorts you can do. I did the film and moving image production course, which is very much all, live action filmmaking. And now I'm a film journalist going to film festivals and world premieres, and I'm a writer on video games doing dialogue. And I was literally writing a dialogue for a cat on a job that I did last year. I never knew I could do those things from doing a practical filmmaking course. There's all sorts out there that you can take that one degree to. And what's particularly nice about us being such a small university is that you will get to know everybody, not just on your course, but other courses as well. And collaborating with other courses is something that we're really big on. We even do a whole project at the start of your second year where you actually do a completely different project from a completely different course to your own for full 2 weeks. So you can learn from a different course and bring that into your own practice, bring that back into your course. So you're taking on different skills. And I think that's something that's really key going forward into the creative industries. That's ever changing and at such a lightning pace as well, where you need to be adaptable. So taking on these different skills from different disciplines and creative practices can be really great and really handy. And it opens up so many different doors as well. And what's exciting as well in our digital age and how quickly things are advancing, I'm sure there's jobs on here that will be adding to this list that don't even exist yet. And by the time you go through that higher education process and you're graduating, there'll be jobs that will exist then that they don't now. It's a really exciting time to dive in. So looking at some graduates and what they've been able to do and what they continue to do. So this is Ella Glendening. She was actually on the film course as well. I know her quite well. She was a year below me, and I've seen her at my house parties, and I find it hilarious that now, having fun with her at a house party, and now she's a BAFTA nominated filmmaker. So when she graduated, she did a lot of short filmmaking as a writer director. I'm pretty sure you can actually watch her short films on 4OD, for Channel 4 On Demand. And then she made a feature film. It was a documentary that was actually about her, and that got a cinema release last year here in the UK. It's literally, you can literally watch it on Netflix right now, and I'm pretty sure, I can't remember whether it's ITVX or 4AD, but it's on one of those channels as well. And it's, yeah, right there in the bottom right of that screenshot, is there anybody out there? And this screenshot is literally taken from the BAFTA broadcast. I remember watching it and seeing her in the crowd. She didn't win it, but to be a graduate, only 5 years of being a graduate from a film course here in the UK, to be a BAFTA nominee is completely unheard of. And now she's actually got 2 feature films that she's developing as well. So she's kind of just set there as a writer director. That's her career now, that's her life, and she's absolutely smashing it. She's doing so well for herself. This is Jordan Grimmer. So he was on the games art design course that we have, and very much leaning into concept art. So you can see an example of his work there. Very much, because with concept art, a lot of it can be like characters, creatures, and props, but he was very much all about backgrounds and environments and kind of getting across world building through his art that he was doing. And when he graduated, he actually worked for EA, Electronic Arts, one of the biggest game publishers and developers in the world. So amazing to have that experience. And recently, because that was in like junior roles, and he now works for a kind of AA indie studio called The Chinese Room. And earlier this year, they released it was like a Scottish horror title called Still Wakes the Deep. And he was their senior artist on that project, which is amazing. It was a really great, like critically acclaimed game. And actually, if you're interested in the kind of games animation space around conceptual arts, Jordan does his own YouTube channel that goes through his processes, and there's some amazing tutorials. So literally going to YouTube, Jordan Grimmer, and it's pretty easy to find because it's a pretty big channel. And he's got some amazing videos on there if you're particularly interested in that. So this is Kat Gundry Beck. She was on our photography course, originally from Ireland, and I believe it's like some family ties that she has with Iceland, because she does a lot of work out in Iceland. And as you can see in her picture there, just casually posing in front of an active volcano, like what a cool profile picture to have. But what's really interesting about Kat's work is that, yes, when she graduated, she's done all of these amazing shoots with Facebook, Google, Vogue, the BBC. You can't really get any bigger than that. But seeing what the landscape of social media like is now, it's very much video based. Think about your Insta reels and your TikToks. It's all video now, but less so still images. But being, studying on an art specialist university on a photography course, and it's giving you those transferable skills. She wasn't necessarily taught film directly, but she was taught how to adapt and how to take on new skills. So being able to learn different creative processes is very much a lifelong skill you're going to be getting from an arts specialist university. So now a lot of what she does is videography as well as photography. So she's able to keep up with the industry, keep up with trends, keep on working with those big brand studios and companies, because she's able to teach herself film principles. So yeah, she's like been over to Egypt. She recently, I think it was last year, she did a big shoot across Scandinavian countries that was all around the Northern Lights. So she's just traveling the world doing these amazing shoots, and she's able to keep up with industry trends to keep that going. We have Ansu here. So he was actually in our very first group of acting students. So the acting course that we have is quite a new one. We've only had 2 graduating classes so far. But even in the first group, he was picked up by Netflix even as a student. So I don't know, for those who have seen Top Boy on Netflix, there's Romando, the villain, right there, and that's Ansu, our acting student. So obviously he's been doing all sorts of different stuff, all sorts of different projects since graduating. We're also just highlighting some of the other graduates as well, because it's amazing that even with 2 graduating classes only, we've had Ansu in a high-end Netflix series. We've had, I think it was 2 students who were in a film that was shown at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year. It's like the most high prolific film festival in the world. And we've actually got 2 acting graduates who've worked on a TV show together that you'll be able to watch on your screens next year, which is amazing. But unfortunately, they're not allowed to say what it is yet, because if they did, they'll probably have a red dot on their forehead. You'll be familiar with non-disclosure agreements and signing away that you're not allowed to talk about these projects. So that's an exciting thing to get used to as a creative. But yeah, they're doing these amazing things already. We have Amy, who was on our graphic communication course. And what's really interesting about Amy is that, yes, loves the creative process and being creative, but also she has a massive love of maths and psychology, and she wanted to kind of bring everything together. So that's why she works within UX, or user experience design. So when she graduated, she worked for a studio called Foolproof, and they have offices in London, they're global, and they have one in Norwich as well. And she's essentially designing these apps and websites. So she's literally made the Domino's website. So all these big brands and studios and companies. But with user experience, it's where the maths and psychology comes in, is okay, like using data and looking at how people interact with apps and websites, and putting yourselves in the shoes of myself, who wants to order a pizza as quickly and as efficiently as I can. So that's where the psychology comes in. How do people interact with these things? But also, how do we make this app, this website, as easy and as accessible as possible? And then using creative processes and solutions to actually design and make those apps and websites. So really bringing all those different areas together. And she worked with Foolproof for quite some time, and now I think it was earlier this year, she's working for the BBC as a UX design research manager. So carrying on that user experience journey that she's taken, and just highlighting kind of money as well. And even a few years ago, when she was I think it was a senior user experience designer for Foolproof. And back then, I think the average salary in the UK was around £29,000 a year. Back then, and in that role of Foolproof, she was on 45,000. So far above the national average. And now, as a manager for the BBC, she's easily on 60,000 plus. So again, there could be a lot of money being made in creative roles. Ooh, there we go. Ollie Hurst. So he's a really good friend of mine. I lived with this guy for 2 years. So he was on the illustration course. And he actually took he did a foundation diploma out of college before he went to study at Norwich. But he came from, I think it is A levels that he did, I'm pretty sure, and then he did the foundation diploma and then went over to Norwich, and he really valued that. And we do get a lot of students doing foundation first, but of course you can go directly from, year 13 straight to us. But loved his time on the illustration course, and he was like an exceptional student. His work's amazing, and so as soon as he graduated, he got a graduate job with Havas Links, and they're a big agency, like design creative agency that work with all sorts of big brands and companies. That's typically kind of science and health focused, and that's a real key part of what he likes to explore within his illustration, because he actually has a pacemaker, and he's had one ever since he was born. So health and sciences is really important to him, and he really feeds that into his works. And as a conceptual illustrator, did a lot of work for like the New Scientist magazine, New York Times, BBC Science magazine, because he worked for Havas Links for a bit, realized that wasn't really what he wanted to do. He wanted a bit more control, so he took a leap of faith, became a freelancer. And it was actually, I think it was only a couple months after taking the plunge, leaving Havas Links, where he got picked up by a representative agency. So he has his own agents. He's represented, and they help him get these high-profile commissions, working with New Scientist, New York Times, Sunday Times, and his literal biggest piece. He did this massive banner for the TED Talks, as you can see there. I mean, it was only like a small digital image, but that got blown up to this 120-foot wide wall and seen by hundreds of thousands of people globally. And it was, I can't remember if it was earlier this year or later last year, where a piece of work that he did was given an award at the World Illustration Awards, and it's one of the highest accolades you could get globally. So he's this huge award-winning illustrator, and he does everything from using Procreate, a free app, on his iPad, using an Apple Pencil in his little flat in Manchester. And I find it amazing that there's all of these amazing award-winning pieces just from a tablet in his little flat. And he's, yeah, loving it. So those are, yeah, different graduates, what they've been able to do. And you can maybe do things like that as well. And how to get into that. So we obviously have different entry requirements. Different universities will have different entry requirements. So for us, essentially 104 UCAS points, particularly if you are all year 12. This is something that you'd definitely be thinking about a lot more next year. But essentially with A levels, we're looking for B, C, C grades. If it's architecture, it's a little bit higher at BBB. But really, the main thing that we're looking at is a strong, relevant portfolio. Or if you're acting, it's an audition process that we do. And really, it's that portfolio that's the main thing that we're looking at. And I can answer questions about portfolios as well if we do have that. And we do have resources online about portfolios and portfolio advice. But yes, B, C, C with your A levels, but it's a portfolio. That's the main thing that we're looking at for most of our courses. So next steps, what you can do. You can obviously look at different prospectuses from different university, look at it, it'll have more info on the courses, the types of projects you would do. Typically, you can find most information on websites nowadays. So for us, to catch up on entry requirements, the types of projects that you would do, what students gone on to do, it's very much all on a website. But if you have any particular questions that the website doesn't answer, we have a little handy plugin where if you go onto a particular course page, you'll see a little thing called Ask a Student with UniBuddy. So you can send a direct message to a current student and they can answer any questions that you might have. But the best thing to do, go for those open days, and don't just come to us, go to as many different open days as you can. See the facilities, see the projects that you can do, chat with the students directly and the course leaders and lecturers as well, and also just feel the vibe. It could be that, on paper, a particular place could sound amazing, but when you go there, if you're not feeling that, then it's probably worth, thinking, okay, maybe this place isn't for me, because a lot of it is instinctive. So go to those open days. And what helps is that, because obviously Norwich isn't exactly just around the corner for you, so we do offer travel bursaries. So we can help pay for your train tickets, your petrol, however you're getting over to Norwich. And I think it's up to £75 that will cover. And I imagine you'll probably most certainly be able to apply for the full amount. So 75 quid, that will easily cover your petrol, and easily cover your train tickets as well. So essentially you can have a free trip to Norwich, would be nice. But also a little top tip, we're obviously not the only university offering these travel bursaries as well. So even if a university doesn't kind of market and highlight and show that they do, it's always worth asking them, because who knows, you could get some free trips around the country. So with open days, our next one is Friday the 29th of November. We'll have one in January as well. So you can get involved with that. Again, come see the facilities, see what we're doing, have a chat with us, see if it's something that you might want to do. But also this QR code here, so if you are allowed you're outside of school time, I imagine, you can get your phones out, and the QR code here is a quick 20-second little form. No, we don't send spam emails of please fill out the survey. Maybe win a tablet. We're just letting you know about different competitions, workshops that we're running. They're all free, they're all online. It's all for you to take part in and actually do some practical work and get a sense of what we do. But also, if you are thinking about getting your portfolio together for university interviews and portfolio reviews, it's so good to have that work in there. So we've currently got a film photography competition running at the moment. The deadline isn't until the end of February. But it's really great to get involved in, great to talk about your personal statements and get a sense of how we do things on our photography course. I've recently been running, it's kind of over now, but I've been running an LGBTQ plus project that highlights different courses, different processes. We do a big summer school every year. It's all for you to, get a hands on. And even if you get involved, do some work, but you're applying for another university, that's great to put into those portfolios and personal statements as well. So if you want to get involved, you can scan the QR code there. But that's essentially everything from me. I'll open up. Is there any questions at all? I've not had a look through the chat at all, so I have no idea what's been going on in the chat here.
That's okay. It's tricky to balance the two when you're presenting as well. But no, so far Jane's been putting some great links, some of the things that you've been talking about, into the chat as we've been going through. So students can go to some of those places that you've already mentioned. So students that are online, if anybody does want to put any questions at all into the chat, then please feel free to do so. That's absolutely no problem at all. But it was so interesting to hear, those examples of previous students, and I think that really puts it into context. We're joined by Lou as well. Lou Harper's here. Here she
Hi.
is.
Nice to see.
Yeah, it's just great to see that, because I think it really brings it home that all those facts and figures about actually how much industry there is, when you can see those real life experiences of people that have gone on to, in a whole host of different ways, use those creative skills and the things that they've learned at university, out in the real world is really, really fantastic to see. Would you agree, Lou?
Yeah, I would. I think actually, Gavin, hi there. I think it would be great as well if we could have a copy of that superb kind of list of careers that people go into with creative, because I think actually students probably sometimes find it difficult to take themselves out of the direct course that they're doing or thinking of doing and see how that can expand into the careers. Because actually, the kind of the talk that you gave about those individual ex-students, your alumni, is so diverse in comparison to some of the courses that they did and how they've utilised those in STEM and things like that. And I think seeing that in context with that list is actually really helpful. And I'm sure that Faye and I would enjoy talking with other students about that.
And it brings me to one of the questions that we had asked beforehand was about architecture. And if you do an architecture degree, are you, so the question is, can I only get jobs directly linked to architecture, or are the job options more diverse than that? And I think the answer would be yes. But I mean, what would you say with regards to that, Gabby?
Yeah, and just quickly, I'm actually just dropping in because we usually have a physical leaflet with all of those different jobs on, and I've got a digital copy which I'm just dropping into the chat right now.
Fantastic.
That's really helpful.
Hopefully you'll be able to access that. It might ask you to ask me for permission to view it, but hopefully it'll be fine.
No.
But if not, I can send it over to you both to then pass on.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But certainly with architecture, yes. We obviously, again, we've got architecture students who are taking it further into becoming official architects. I didn't realize that it's actually a criminal offense to call yourself an architect if you're not legally an architect.
It is. Yeah.
Now
have to be registered.
Yes. And so doing the architecture course, that'll get you your part 1 out of 3 parts to become official architect. And we've had students do that pathway. But also what helps with architecture in particular is you actually share the first year of study with the interior design students. And actually, it's really nice having this photo up because that's the open architecture studio there. And they've got the nicest building. That spiral staircase is so nice and cool. The staircase is obscuring a lot of the open space down there. So architecture, interior design share the same first year, but even outside of that, you're sharing the same space. So you're constantly seeing what interior design students are doing. So you're picking up those skills. So we have architecture students who are going into interior design pathways. Actually, we've got architecture students because they're learning how to use 3D software and actually using video game engines to do their kind of mock-ups instead of making scale models. So you've got architecture students who are looking to go into games and they're modeling and designing buildings and structures using video games. So yeah, you can absolutely take those there, like take an architecture degree and go into all sorts of different areas.
I noticed that you've got things like conservation on there as well, and I know that in the production of series like Bridgerton and things like that, that students may be familiar with, that they actually have used, you know, architectural knowledge and all sorts. So there's a huge range of careers that can be spin-offs from these, and actually it's good for students not to see those in isolation. And I think your comment about going to an art somewhere that specialises in those creative arts, like yourself at Norwich, and there are obviously others, as you said, but I think actually it would be great for our students to come and see one of your open days and visit some of those others creative, where they can see that expansiveness and crossover between those, not just in terms of the courses, but also those careers. Can I just ask a little bit, if that's okay, Faye, just ask Gavin a little bit about the portfolio sort of presentation, and how you would suggest that students who might be in year 12 at the moment start to think about how to put together something that will stand them in good stead over time. Work experience can be quite difficult to get in some of the creative arts, and I think that's quite widely acknowledged. So what could students do to begin that portfolio perhaps now in year 12 and build on that?
Yeah, really great question. And certainly, yes, even in year 12, something to maybe have on the back burner, have on the back of your mind and start thinking about this. Honestly, really what you can do, that's kind of I say an easy win, but something to do that will really help make your portfolio stand out is having at least one project that's completely separate from school or sixth form. So utilizing your spare time that you have and develop your own. It doesn't have to be a massive project. It could be just a small little thing. It could even be half finished. But the fact that you're doing your own project, it gets across lots of different things. First of all, you're serious about, and you're passionate about that particular course that you're applying for, because you're using your free time that you have in your evenings, your weekends, to develop this project, to develop those pieces. But also it makes your work stand out because it's going to be unlike anybody else's work, because you're obviously going to be doing what you want. You're not tied to any specific brief or unit or project at your sixth form. And because you are doing something that whatever you want to, it actually gives us a little bit better insight into what you're particularly interested in within that particular field. So getting at least one personal project in is such a great thing to do. But I say if you can, because obviously I have no idea what your lives are like outside of this. You could be super busy with part-time work or things happening with friends or family. But if you can, if you've got the time, you've got the energy for it, get a personal project in there. And it's great. That's something that you could do now before things get busy in year 13.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks. Faye, over to you.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, it was going. I made a note halfway through was to ask about about how students can start to develop their sort of work experience opportunities, because it is so difficult in these particular industries. And I think networking can really help with that. And do you have any sort of hints or tips or suggestions for this age? Because it's quite different when you're at university age. You've got a lot more opportunities open to you, potentially 18 plus, but 16 to 18 can be quite difficult to start to network. Have you got any advice for students when they're starting out, to gain a bit of confidence around that?
I know there's obviously some dangers with this to keep in mind and think about, but social media is so good for networking, particularly if it is particularly in kind of media areas like film, games, animation. Social media will be your best friend, because and I could say, like, with all of my commissions that I've had and all my work opportunities, everything has been through Twitter. before it's been set on fire. It's Blue Sky nowadays. Everyone's jumped ship to Blue Sky now. But even like Instagram, because particularly with fashion, fine art areas, photography, you'll find a lot of these professionals and studios on Instagram. Shoot over a direct message. I know it can be scary just reaching out in the dark, but honestly, everybody across these different creative industries are so nice and they generally want to help you out. The worst that can happen is that they tell you, no, sorry, can't help you out. And a lot of the time, it's because they just don't have the time because they're so busy. So it's about being brave enough to kind of take that step forward and just reach out to people online. So yeah, social media can be really helpful, but obviously, do a bit of a background check first on particular professionals, and obviously be pretty. I mean, you don't have to be so formal, but obviously have a good first impression when you're reaching out to them. But that can honestly be a really good stepping point. I've kind of shot out random direct messages to all sorts of different professionals, some really big people as well, and they've all responded. They've all been really nice. Sometimes it's just like, hey, great to hear from you. Sorry, I can't really help out at the moment. But that's absolutely fine. Like, that's absolutely the worst that can happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I think that's really good advice. And yeah, being careful online obviously is so important at this age, but learning how to use that sort of responsibly in a professional capacity is quite important, isn't it? Because as you say, it can really make such a big difference as you go through these kind of industries. So I think we're just about sort of at time. So I don't think we've had any other questions in the chat. We've clearly covered everything perfectly well without any additional questions, which is great. I've tried clicking onto that file. It won't allow me to access it. It needs an email. The email won't be accepted. So if we could send that over, we will then share it with the students on here and those that aren't able to attend today. But if we haven't got anything else to add, then we'll wrap this up and stop the recording. But thank you so much, Gavin. Your time has been really, really great and really well appreciated. We know that as seems to get a lot from this. So thank you so much, Gavin.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
You log off now and have a good evening, hopefully.
And you and everyone else.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
very much,
much.
Gavin. All the very best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.